Thank you all for joining. My name is Eric Sanhusen. I'm the recently elected president of the Ethical Culture Society of Bergen County, and I'm really glad to be able to host so many people here for this town hall on the Bergen Society plan for revitalizing the AEU, which was developed by Kurt Collier with input from our board and membership. So I just want to say a couple of sort of housekeeping items. Of course, we ask that you bring your questions, and hopefully if you have a comment or a critique, hopefully you can find a way to frame it in the form of a specific question. I will prioritize people who have not yet had a chance to speak or to ask a question, of course, but we want everyone to feel welcome and able to participate. We do ask that everybody keep it curious and courteous, and that we stick to the discussion of the particulars of the plan that's being presented tonight. There will be time for comparative discussions of this versus other plans at the assembly activities. And so I really want to make sure that we keep our focus on what's right in front of us tonight. So with that said, and without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Kurt Collier.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for coming out. I know we've been speaking with a lot of societies who've also reached out to us, and so we anticipate a somewhat smallish crowd. I guess there's about 30 of us now, but so appreciate you coming in. Some of you had some other specific questions.
Kurt, if I may, I'm going to mute everyone and then ask you to unmute, please.
Yeah, we're hearing a little bit of background. That included me. I had to unmute myself. There you go. This came out of a plan that we've been working with about the needs of the Bergen Ethical Culture Society, and based also on my many years of experience of working in community development and with many different groups. Some of you may know that that's what I did professionally for the last 15 years with an organization created by the National Park Service and the EPA. I wrote the feasibility studies for several different cities, including for Washington, D.C., Tucson, Arizona, the San Francisco Bay Area, Mobile, Alabama. These year-long feasibility studies were to where I'd go and look at bring all the nonprofits together, and then figure out how we could best serve that committee, what was not served. And then I would write big 3-year to 5-year plans for the city. And then if they all got approved, we would release federal money to them. I was also, as part of the youth program developer, ran youth programs in about 20 American cities and 25 national parks and with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And as late as 2 weeks ago, I'm still consulting with the National Park Service and some others who are trying to figure out how to engage new and younger audiences, if that sounds familiar to you, and more diverse audiences. So this is kind of work I've been doing for quite a long period of time. And looking at what the needs of the AEU are from the perspective of both of a leader, someone who's been at multiple societies. I was an intern at the St. Louis Society for a year and a half, and then got hired by the Riverdale Society before I finished, was there for 10.5 years, the New York Society for 6 years, this society now, both as an interim and now as the full-time leader. And I'm also the consulting leader for Silicon Valley. And hello, John Dukovic and Linda, good to see y'all as well. I founded the Austin Society based on some programs that I ran around there when I was teaching at the university and took groups around. We met in Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Lubbock, Texas, and Corpus Christi. And eventually we took everybody out onto a lake, those of you who are from Austin, Lake Travis, on a boat, shut off the engine and said we weren't leaving to shore until they founded an ethical society. So that's how that got started. A little bit of Texas coercion there. But so this is the work, like I said, I've consulted with National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Forest Service, multiple federal agencies. I've also been a businessman myself for many years and ran construction. I teach construction is one of the things I'm doing. And so I come at this from multiple different perspectives and looking at what we need from the Ethical Society here at the Bergen Society from American Ethical Union and our own challenges. And so this program kind of came from all of that background, both my experience, my work with lots of different societies, my absolute love of ethical culture as my religion, and then just the communities I work with. So we're going to kind of go through a program I ran through at the President's Council, but also then to kind of unpack a little bit more and then create a period for questions and answers. And like I said, we've had a number of people have already reached out to me already. And so luckily we don't have too many people in the room and we can ask questions and later on. So 1 second here. And hopefully you can see that screen there. Right, here we go. Yeah, so like I said, this is what I've been doing for a long period of time. And I come at these things from a perspective of someone who's done community development and reorganization and thinking about these things in multiple different levels, both at the universities where I taught. I created the speech and hearing of the audiology department at one hospital. Just my background from multiple places about what is needed today and how do we engage urban youth. That's what I did quite a bit of consulting with a lot of different organizations, is how do you engage that younger audience that's not there? And how do we build a future from that? I have to tell you, that's something we hear from everybody. That's a picture of me and my son there in the bottom corner. These are things we hear about from everybody. We're in trouble with the United States in multiple ways. 33% of Americans join congregations. That's down from what, 75%? Those of us in the New York, New Jersey area, it's closer to 18% of people join synagogues, churches, or mosques. And so you're not seeing people come into the door. 4,500 Protestant churches closed their door last year. There are actually less Protestant churches this year than there was last year. Only 17% of American congregations have active Sunday schools of what they were before. 73% of congregations are in debt, an average of $1,800 to $2,000 per member. So if you're worried over your $5,000 debt, imagine if you had a $200,000 to $300,000 debt, which is what typically a lot of these churches have. And civic engagement has plummeted. I work a lot with the Martin Luther King birthday committee here in town, and they're having struggles. Everybody's having struggles getting there. And this was regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, creeds. None of that really matters. We're all seeing very similar kinds of drops, which the first thing we just had to understand that people aren't joining because you're older, racist, or patriarchal, or heteronormative, or any of these things that people say. If that were true, then the LGBTQ groups I've struggled to help and support, they would not be losing members. The women's organizations that you used to be a part of are struggling to find people. I consult with two groups just recently, one in Richmond, Virginia, that they cannot get young adults. It's run by people in their 30s. These three nonprofits that brought me down there, legacy civil rights groups, everybody's seeing the same decline. And my comments to all these federal agencies and all these organizations is to say this gently, it's just that you're not relevant to their lives. And that's the thing that we had to realize, is that the groups are just somewhere else. You know, Adler had a very unique vision, something really incredible. And he kind of evolved it over time for those of you who are fans of the philosophy like I am. In his book, The Reconstruction of the Spiritual Ideal, he said, we all have these deep-seated questions that we must answer. Like, do I matter in the universe? You know, if I matter, then why is there suffering in the world? And how can we live in a way in which we're in harmony with others and experience the fullness of life, yet don't allow me to have what Adler called the divided conscience, which is to check my brain at the door or not live authentically. As a gay man, as a single father raising a gay son, we know from the South, when I go places, that we don't feel welcome and we have to change ourselves. And we're not doing that anymore, which is the reason we're back in New York. And so Adler kind of argued that because of all these ideas and beliefs, we cloak ourselves with systems of belief, right? I'm from South Texas, other people from California, you may be from Europe, you've been exposed to different religions, and we all kind of hear these answers and we wrap ourselves like a cloak of beliefs around that. And then unfortunately, when we all get together, we see that someone's cloak is radically different. I'm paraphrasing Adler here, is radically different from our own. And we spend most of our time tugging each other's coats, forgetting that the deeper questions that drive that are behind that. It's silly to tug at another person's sense of self and how they define themselves without addressing those three principal questions. Do I matter? And so for Adler, that's where we would focus our attention. Do you matter in the universe? That's why we say we affirm the worth and dignity of the person as our beginning place. If we matter, then why is there suffering? We work on the culture so the culture affirms everybody, but it still allows for uniqueness, which was central to kind of his belief system there. And so at the beginning, that's what he did. We set up the first child study organizations in the United States and built free kindergartens. We built vocational schools like the Ethical Culture School, which is originally a vocational. We had wellness and retreat centers like Hudson Guild Farm out there. We thought it was important to get people out and to put them in green spaces and allow people to actually work on the farm. Benton Mackay was visiting with the ethical culturist when he loved this idea so much. He says, I'm going to do that all up and down the East Coast. And he designed the Appalachian Trail built on this model. We built settlement houses for foreigners and immigrants to when the people who came in to help them settle, find a home, get training, learn the language. We built hospitals like Blythdale's Children's Hospitals, libraries. Our teaching participatory democracy continues today with the Encampment for Citizenship. Ethical Culture is the organization that abolished child labor in the United States. Think of that. We built housing for seniors like that little apartment in the bottom left hand. And you see the little green roof on it. That was Felix Adler's apartment. He was one of those seniors who lived there. And I used to live right next door to that when I worked at the Riverdale Society. And every time I'd walk out the door, I'd see his door and I'd go, good morning, Mr. Adler. I'm keeping your movement going, sir. We created affordable home nursing. Think about that providing free services and going to people's houses to be able to do this back in the 1800s. Margaret Sanger was working with the visiting nurse program when she said it didn't go far enough for women's reproductive rights, and she split off and founded Planned Parenthood. But she started as a visiting nurse service of New York. We built the first integrated camps in the United States, and some of you, like Camp Policia and others, are still being maintained to this day. We built co-housing units, 100 co-housing units in Manhattan, which are still there to this day. If you wanted to visit them. And we also started the first Congress on Racial Equality and those kinds of studies. And when I worked at the Riverdale Society, there was this quote here from Dr. Spetter, who was my predecessor. He had been there, I think, for 36 years. He also used to say, as hope is not a place you find, like some undiscovered country. Hope is a place you build. And it came out of that ethical idea of let's affirm the worth and dignity of everyone. And in the parlance of social development, those of us who organizational development who do this stuff, these are called social innovations, where you apply new approaches to big, hairy, scary problems. Now we think, oh, nursing services, affordable housing, senior residences, of course, everybody does that. They didn't do that in 1876. These were cutting edge, new kinds of things that attracted lots of attention. Adler could go and give a talk in Carnegie Hall, which is one of the places he used to lecture, and fill the entire hall. And on the first row was the New York Times and the Washington Post, and they would send reporters to record everything he'd done because it was such a progressive, new, innovative way and a creative way to address these kinds of problems. And we kind of lost that over the years, but not completely. Even societies carried on, like building camps. The Riverdale Society built the largest free mental health clinic in America at its time. The largest free mental health clinic in the United States was built by the Riverdale Society. And these are things that people commonly did. We founded, you can go to the websites, the Sanctuary Coalition for refugees who are coming in here, who are thrown into the prison system, and then we work to get them out of the prison system and find them houses. We also created the fair housing for New York, New Jersey, and you can see these things where we did those kind of stuff. Cory Booker always credits the ethical culture free housing movement for allowing his family to move in neighborhoods that Black people were not allowed to move into in those days. So we have this tremendous history. And for those of us who do this work and who listen to these things all the time, we're talking about social innovation. But for some of you, you may know this as social enterprise or social ventures, it's called, or social entrepreneurship. The idea that you create new systems, new way of handling problems, and think about how you're going to do this in creative ways. And the fantastic thing about that, or the sad thing about that, is the world still needs us to do this. You know, climate change, mass shootings, a president indicted, states taking away voter rights, states taking away a woman's right to control her own body again and again and again. We need big, giant programs and processes for address these things, which is our history. It's our legacy. For those of us who practice a religion, this is what we do with our lives to a certain extent. Now, other people are doing this too. If you are out in Los Angeles, the Social Innovation Summit just ended. These are other people who are now having massive conventions, and you can Google social innovation and you'll see everybody's doing this now, right? Not just us. They're having large numbers of conventions. They're all getting together with all these young people. This is what we talk about. They say, you know, we're environment and diversity, equity and inclusion and STEM and economic vitality and health and witness and tech and all this kind of stuff. And big, gigantic conferences full of young people, all trying to figure out how we can address these problems through social ventures, social innovation, and creativity, which is where they are. People often ask where the young people are. These are young adults who graduated from college with $60,000 in debt to start. You know, some of them have more than that if they get the master's degree. And they're looking for a way to be socially innovative and creative, but they need to make a living at it. And they're trying to think what new technology, what new approach, what new way of dealing with the environment, what innovation can we bring to these kinds of stuff? Look at the people who just supported that conference. Everybody from, you know, the usual Amazon and ARP and Lululemon, Comcast, Walton, Annenberg Foundation. You probably all know because you're all fans of NPR. That's who supports a lot of that. Discovery, Caterpillar, even it's some others. And this is a tiny fraction of the people who are throwing thousands of dollars to host these conferences, so people can talk about AI and democracy and cisgendered poets, and also having second chance opportunities for preventing gun violence, looking at human rights things, looking at data, and how all of this creativity that's flowing out of the United States can transform this country, and how they can do it in new and creative ways. And that's just kind of a bit of that. So this is what Adler thought we would do. So the first thing we need to do is let's just stop thinking of others in the problem. And sometimes in our network and our movement, we've been doing that, right? That there's something wrong with you. You're not open enough, not woke enough, you're racist, you're supremacist, you're whatever. And you know, we're going to create some kind of a justice system to address all this kind of stuff. Those are really, really foreign concepts to ethical culture in many ways. Because for Adler, others are the solution. And so how actually do we not think of people as problems, but as solutions? Can we reorganize once again and get back to ethical culture's primary history? Now, so the organization of this plan has many different parts. First thing is for people to realize that the American Ethical Union, we are a congregational polity. So, you know, you have a papacy, you have an episcopacy, which is an equal bishopric, you have a presbytery run by elders, and then you come further down and you get to us, which is a congregational polity, which means the power and all the decision and all the creativity flows out of the societies. For the first 75 years, we didn't even have ethical culture. American Ethical Union. We just had the societies. We didn't elect our first executive director until 1964, which is Howard Radis from the Bergen Society, who left to do that thing. These are kind of new ways of looking at that, but the polity still rests with us. And we have to raise the capacity of the societies. As you heard, Reisig just took a pause, very scary. A lot of the 60% of this is half the societies have 60 members or less. We're in trouble. And the thing is that these things are not insurmountable. I go into groups all the time. This is the work I do. And they're down to 10 people. I say, all is not lost. We can reorganize, and there's different things you can do. And so part of that is we have to rebuild the societies, which is the main focus of this proposal. Sometimes people keep talking about, well, we need to do this for the AEU and the AEU. The AEU was an auxiliary organization that we created on the side. And you can check the 1947 charter of that to see, which I keep on my desk, that it was created as an auxiliary organization to assist the societies. We are actually pouring more money now into the AEU. For us, it's almost 8% of our budget goes to the AEU, and what we have to ask each of the societies we're getting back. In 1964, when we got together, and there were 47 societies and 47 board members, by the way, they hired their first ethical culture executive director in 1964. Their comment to them is, you got to make sure that more money comes out of the AEU than goes in. That's how we should think of its decision. How can we get the AEU back to the place where it's pouring out more resources than we're giving it? The societies are already doing a lot of the work that the American Ethical Union seems to want to do, which is fine if they could do it, if they have the money. And that's what the Washington Society in 1964 under Ed Erickson said, listen, don't do anything that asks the societies for money that you should be doing yourself. And we've gotten away from that for a long period of time. The same thing with the National Leaders Conference. It's grown, it's bigger. We need to give them their kind of freedom to do so. But I want to focus on these 3 buttons on the right here, which is to create a national ethical action project with local interface. The way I did this, and we did this with other organizations, is to focus on one big national project that has that's important to the United States, and then to create an opportunity for all local trusts to engage in that process. We were so effective at my former organization, Groundwork USA, that we ended on the front page of the New York Times. And for people who just wanted to understand how climate change and how redlining were impacting heat deaths in the city. That was their main focus on what are called climate resiliency cities. That kind of data, the focus on innovation, the focus on doing everything online is where the young people are. And that's the kind of stuff that they want. What is our national interface where they can take this little device in their hand, by cell phone, and actually interact with it and be a part of that? We also need to create a national grant writing pool. And I'm often surprised with progressive organizations that they're not writing grants. I have a lot of friends in the federal government. My brother works for the federal government. Other people work, I know, very closely. And they said, here's the problem. We put all these grants and all these conservative organizations come in and try to snap at that money. Where are the progressive churches that are going after this money? None of them, because you all have this thing about money. We need to get rid of that idea. There is thousands upon thousands of dollars. And I have never seen so much money flowing in grants as we do now. And there's a way to get that. I just taught a grant writing class to 22 people. What was it? 8 societies signed up for that in learning how to do that. It took me 2 seconds, literally just a couple of seconds to fill out a page the other day, and got another $3,000 for programs. There has never been this much money. And I'll tell you why about that, but it's a government thing. I'll tell you where the money's coming from. We'll get that later on. But also, we should be providing each of the societies with micro grants. Money should be coming from the American Ethical Union so that you can run these social adventure and social action programs. And just to give you an idea, you guys say, well, it's not possible for society to do that. That's kind of what we've been doing here. We're slowly at the Bergen Society moving away from kind of the ethical humanism and more towards the ethical culture's focus on social innovation as our project. The society is in many ways, like several of you, 144 members, only 13% diversity. It's crazy in the United States that to be considered a diverse congregation, 20% of your membership has to be different. That's a very low bar we have, unfortunately, in this country. And we can all do so much better. I want to create a place where my own son can walk in the door and see people that he's connected to. It's 9 new members this year, several deaths, as you've all been experiencing. We have 2 services on Sunday. We started 2 services. And, we get 20, 25 for the first service in the morning, 55 to 100 for the second service. So about a total of 100, somewhere around 100 to 125 people for services on Sunday mornings. Large, our biggest attendance, 147. We have 8 Sunday school families. As most parents are not coming into Sunday schools. Of the 8, according to Pew Research, of the 18 to 24-year-old women, 48% said they would never put their kids in a Sunday school program because of the stigma around what the churches have done. We get lots of visitors, 312 visitors a year, flooded with visitors, no problem there. They're not being converted into memberships. 316 activities, 1,936 volunteer hours. We supported an orphanage in Uganda for the past 20 years. That's one of our big projects, and a food distribution center in Haiti. We raise lots of money for both of those. 62 outside organizations we work with on a given Sunday. And that's one of those signs, whether you're growing or not, is how many outside organizations are you working with. We have the longest running job and career counseling program, 10 years, longest diversity, equity, inclusion circles, which now have run twice a month for 5 years, and we're just featured by American Ethical Union. We have the longest running Spanish language program, still running every month for 7 years. We also have a teen youth construction program, and yay to NICEC for joining this year. We've already raised $25,000 for salaries this coming summer alone. We raised about 50, that's actually gone up to $61,000 in grants. 61% of members are online and visit at least 2 pages. 185 members receive our newsletter and 67% open it. These are all facts and figures you can easily get. And when we do the stress test for each of your organizations, this is the data I'm going to be coming to listen to you to say, if you're meeting, what are these goals that you're meeting, which are important and for organizational development. We have 10,933 people who liked our Facebook. You probably have the same thing. Instagram, 6,511, 100,000 people. Meetup, all those things often don't mean anything because people click on it and you never see them again. And luckily, we were able to balance our budget during the pandemic because of cash on hand. Luckily, that was a lucky thing. And this just shows you how
Kurt, may I interrupt here?
Yes.
Just before we move off of this slide, there was a question from Emily Newman in the chat.
Hey, Emily.
She asked, how is diversity being defined? And so before we move on from that, I thought this would be a good chance to ask that question.
We defined it based on the diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of perimeters that are used by several different groups. That doesn't count gay people like myself, which is crazy, right? Because I'm no longer listed as diversity. It doesn't mention other ways in which people are different, right? So if a lot of people in your congregation are Persian, do you call that person diverse or not? We're not, they're from Persia, but they're not counted by those ways. So we try to use the conservative measures by which these things are often done. And it's a terrible thing that we even have this way of dividing up races because, as you know, many of us are mutts. We're varieties of different things, including myself. And so it's what do you check in the box, sometimes, and those things. So it's a good question, Emily. I think that's one of the ways that people can frame the conversation. If I were to put all the amounts of diversity in there, we'd be very, very, very much more diverse. But, there we go. This gives you just examples of the kinds of things we do, everything from summer employment. We had 20 groups join us for the Rise Up for Ethics pumpkin festivals. We had Latinas in the laboratory celebrating all of our scientists, one of our most successful Sundays, skills auctions. We have the Great New Jersey Science Show. We do lots of stuff. You all do lots of things. These are just kind of the flyers typically of some of the stuff that we've been doing, but you've all kind of done similar things as well. It's really important that you do your performance measures, which is the other thing I eventually hope to do with all of you. If the Bergen proposal gets is to look at your performance measures. How many outreach programs do you have? Each of those outreach programs, how many members or non-members are engaged, and how much money are they raising, right? Each of our groups should be raising money. We have 17 outreach programs. They raised $19,000 in donations, and I wrote an additional $32,000 in grants for them. So we have $52,000 coming from outside sources just in this last several months around that. And we have now other groups who are saying, hey, can we be a part of you? Like the LGBTQ plus group circle, which is older adult, gay, lesbian, transgender people who don't have children and are worried about how they're going to retire. We run something called the Resistance Cafe with other groups. So you have to have lots of different outreach programs and lots of different things. These can be easily done with 1 or 2 people because that's how we do it with 1 or 2 people ourselves. We just have people who take on, what is your passion? You have a passion, great. You want to do job training and career development for women, great. Start the job club. You want to speak Spanish, great. We're going to start Conversemos and run for 10 years. And that's what we do. You fuel passions and you keep people interested in the stuff that we've been teaching in the ethical culture movement since summer school. What's going on here? So with this social innovation approach, we've been able to focus on job training for young adults, provide resume building experiences. We're closing the diversity gap in conservation science. All of our youth are diverse in our youth programs. We're 45% diverse with our Sunday school families. We're 90% diverse with our teenage programs. We increase science literacy in teens. We have now a study group. I just got off the phone, as I told you, with the professor from Washington. The New Jersey Council of the Humanities asked us to study place attachment theory. And so this is the kind of research and book reading stuff that any of your groups could do. We have citizen science projects. We get all these grants from Hudson River Foundation. We talk about climate change. It's basically funding our Sunday school, which you can get grants to fund all of your summer school. We even get people to pay for the lighting through all of our building. And the great thing is we can provide 21 paid job opportunities. So the relevancy is amazing. The New York Society can speak it for themselves. Did y'all get a lot of applications for the jobs? You did indeed, right? We did too. We have 15 young people within 3 weeks who've applied for our summer job. And because I'm a grant writer, I've been able to raise $300,000 worth of grant funding for organizations, which you can do on the side. There's never been more money than ever before in these kinds of activities. And so just focusing on the grants that we got here, this is an example of how we keep track of them. But if you look in that one little colored section there, you can see that $19,000 of these grants has gone right into our general coffers, from which my salary and other people are paid. And so as leaders get more adept at writing grants, more and more of their salaries should be covered by this kind of stuff, or by other organizations, other kinds of staff that you have on side of there. Computer gets so locked up. 1 second. So what are we suggesting for the AEU? The AEU is supposed to be one of the things that we have as an auxiliary that's assisting your society. That's why we created it. We created it to assist your society. And part of the problem we have is that we don't have representation enough on the board. That's not a critique of the people on the board. They can't run around, and they've been trying to do that and have conversations with all of you about the 90 things that you have going on. Rather, as Eric and I have suggested, we should just put one person from each society on the board. That doesn't mean we get rid of the existing board. Some of those people would just be reappointed by their societies. We can keep the same board members that we have, but we need more representation from all of us on the board. And some people said, oh, you know, you're not supposed to have such a big board. We had 47 people in 1964 when the ethical culture budget was in real 2023 dollars was about $1 million. I work with lots of groups, and you can have well more than 9 people or 10 people on the board. That myth came from the old business school models in the 1990s that said, oh, you got to make decision making nimble. And as you well seen and was demonstrated just in this past year, a small board doesn't make you any more nimble than a board of 45 or so people on there. The thing that we need, though, is that we need to make sure that we have all of these people on the board, because we can provide training at the board there. So imagine if you sent your society member who wanted to learn all of these models, that's one place that they can go. We want to provide 4 two-day annual training workshops. These things do take training, you need a little hand holding to figure out that. We need to go through some stress tests for y'all. We need to look at your value propositions, your targeting strategies, the work I do with other national organizations. We need to cut apportionments. There's no reason why we give so much money. I'll tell you, you're already giving more money in apportionments than any network organization I know of. Let me repeat that. We're pouring more money into the American Ethical Union than any other network organization I know of. You know how much money flows? I was just in a big network organization with 23 organizations. You know how much money flowed into the national office? $0. That's how it should be. We're eventually American Ethical Union, who goes to the same kind of training, is giving us money and us resources. And that's how network organizations frequently work across the United States. We need a national ethical election project. We need micro grant studying. We need all these things. We need to give the National Leaders Council more autonomy so that they can focus on grants as well. If they ran a grant now, they're not a 501c3, they can't get the money. They need to be able to do that. And we also need to develop an ethical culture curriculum. As you know, the one we have here, we call STEAM, which is the ethics of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. It's how we focus on helping develop the skills the youth need to tackle climate change, to tackle remaking the green economy, to making it more diverse. Our goal should be to put a tool in every youth's hand and a grant writing pen in every adult's hand. That's my goal. That's going to be like a little slogan to put on a t-shirt there. What we're not suggesting is we don't need an organizational development consultant. That's not the right time for that. I am an organizational development person. That's not what you would need me to do, because they're not here to tell you to figure out who you are, which seems to be the question that has been posed that they will be asked. You don't want to do that because they're going to take you off in left field. You're going to waste another couple of years. And we've done this in the past and it's never worked because they've never been ethical culturists. And we should also not be dwelling with some other dwindling organizations. You know, 2/3 of the UU congregations are also under 140 members. The humanist model is not a congregational model. Why would we talk about their different belief systems? It's like joining some other religion, and we're not interested in doing those things. And most of these humanist groups are just run on college campuses, and there is zero. I've checked with the Secular Coalition of America, how many off-campus free-running groups do they have? And they don't have. And these are the challenges that we need to understand. So we just need to remember that the perception many people have is that the American Ethical Union somehow runs the societies, and that's not true. It was because of our congregational polity, it's a thing on the side. Now, so here's the thing that we're asking is to kind of expand the board, make it just a quarterly, because a lot of you don't have time to go every month. There's no reason why people would go to a national board more than quarterly, once a quarterly. We need an advisory council. I'd love to see that, putting those together. And many of the groups I work with, I help them get advisory people from all across the spectrum in the United States who can help us figure out the social innovation project. Now, my goal is also then for us to have workshops on an annual basis that we need to go through every year. And this is based on my experience with other organizations. The first is this ethics of sustainability and resiliency. Each society needs to come in. We need to kind of do your annual stress test to look at where you are on the dashboard, we call it, of thinking of what is your resiliency? What's your prognosis? Where are you? Where are you behind? Because a lot of people don't know where they're behind, and they don't understand why all of a sudden they had to close their doors because they weren't paying attention to some things and forgetting about some other things. These are things teaching all of us how we use theories of change and logic models, which is what we do in change organizations, is be able to document, assess, and see where we're going. And the funding streams. Most congregations are shocked when I say that member donations should only be 9% of your income. And you're all going, what, 9%? Yeah, it's supposed to be about 9%. Because if you do the math, donations have not kept up with the pace of inflation. You say, well, we've had the same amount of money we've had for years. Yeah, but now you got a leader for half a time. You got no youth leader that you're paying. You got no office administration and all this kind of stuff. You've kept the same amount of money. And, you know, luckily we have our donors, but you should be relying more on grants, more on fee for service, and other ways that you can bring in income that we need to show you, and developing these strategies, which are simple things to do, which a group of 3 people can do. These are not big things. The second workshop is to focus on your value propositions. What is it about your society that people would pay money to come and to participate in? What is it that you do that makes people want to take a bus and then another bus and pull a stroller to your door because they find it that valuable to them? And we take people through a process of helping them just understand what that is. And then just also the importance of seeing your society as a 7-day-a-week learning laboratory. Even if you're just a small group or you don't have a building, there are other things and ways that you can slowly move into this direction. You also need to understand that most of these grants, and what people think is, oh, yeah, these are big giant organizations. They're done with, 30, 40, 50 people. That's absolutely not true. If you go to most of these organizations, they have a staff of 2 or 3 people. They have a staff of 2 or 3 people. And we'll show you how to do this, how you can have a big impact with just a few people. For those of you who are still in corporations, you probably know that in your foundation wing, there may be only 2 people in the office, and yet they're funding it and sending out $6 million and doing this other kind of stuff, and how all that works. And also is the work I did with Grand Teton National Park is to help them understand their targeted outreach training. The national park asked me if I could help them with this program they had called Find Your Park. And we're going to put up billboards and we're going to highlight all the cool things we have. We got all this great landscapes and it's so wonderful. Come here and look at all these beautiful things. And then they asked me, do I think it'll work? And I said, I don't think that's going to work. If people wanted that, they would already be coming in the door for those things. The question is, what are their needs or passions? And how do you use the assets of your congregation to meet those needs? So we created something called the Mountains to Main Street program, which has been running now for many, many years at Grand Teton National Park, where we train young adults to look at the needs and passions of their communities and use the assets of their local group, in this case, our ethical societies, to meet those needs. And how do we integrate trauma-informed community practices? What, 33% of youth that disappeared from college enrollment? 60% of youth say that they're depressed or they have anxiety now. We are a traumatized group of people, and we need to learn how to address those kinds of stuff in your program design. And frankly, we need a new curriculum. I talk to parents about focusing on the STEAM part of that, and how do we help children learn the problem solving that they need to do and the skills that they'll need for ethical innovation. They love it. They come every single Sunday. The same families show up every single Sunday without fail for months on end, and to learn this kind of stuff. And this is the thing that families ask us for. Go home and take your Google Trends calculator, and I can show you how to do that, and plug in a couple of things. Plug in algebra lessons for home, or for parents to help kids with algebra, or to help them with any kind of thing, or science for kids, and then put in humanism or ethics. Humanism and ethics, or humanism will be flatlined. No one's talking about that. Ethics will have a lot more activity because people are studying the Renaissance and the Reformation movement. And then science and innovation and creativity and all these things will be off the charts. So we need this local national project. It's extremely important. National social innovations gain national attention. That's how I work with groups to get them out there in the news, and for people to come in because they're doing something innovative that allows network organizations to share resources. We should be talking to each other, societies, not necessarily talking through the American Ethical Union. We should be reaching out to others like we're doing with the New York Society and the Westchester Society. The Oppenheimer movie has come out. You all know Oppenheimer graduated from Philston Ethical Culture School, and it had his impact in his book. Let's all go see his movie, right? There are ways that we can all get together to talk about this stuff with each other. We don't have to necessarily need a national organization to do that, although national organizations do help. We need attachment to large projects so that any tiny congregations, a congregation of 10, could still be part of that dialogue and bringing in your volunteers and maybe gathering data, looking at that. Millennials, and it's remarkable to think The 75% of Americans, 75% of Americans were born after 1965. 25% of us were born before 1965. Those large national projects need to allow for those millennials, which are digital natives, they're called in the field now. They're so handy with the phone. That's how they approach us everything, that we need a national project that has a digital face and a footprint and a user interface that people can be a part of that, who are not even part of the ethical culture movement. And these are the types of job training opportunities that young adults are looking for. But Coursera, if you're familiar with Coursera, the online continuing education program, that what they had 10 million new subscribers last year in 2022 alone. All of these online remastering where this young group is trying to learn all of this new stuff. Some of them I'm a member of too. You take these massive amount of classes. This is where young adults are. They're trying to retool themselves and reimagine. And yet we could still right size that for a small congregation of 20 people. That's what's great about national projects. One of them I would recommend is the National Ethical Indicators. I think the American Ethical Union, the Ethical Culture Project of the United States, should be creating an online indicators of how we are progressing as a nation. And we can have this whole conversation about how we're doing. Are we spending more money on schools than hospitals? Are we creating a prison to pipeline with the schools and all this kind of stuff? How are we diversifying that? How are we closing the income gap in the United States? And all of these measures are easy to find. If any of you are familiar with ESRI or ArcGIS data, which is by the billion gigabytes of this data out there that we use for these projects, you can easily get these things. These are things that young people want to know and they can get involved in. This digital workforce that's specifically focusing on the digital new digital revolution is supposed to grow within 12%. And when I go to the government's workshops and all this stuff, they said, this is where you need to focus because this is what we're funding. We're funding closing the digital divide within the different ethnic groups and by race and by gender and equity and trying to make that as so that's what they're interested in. We did this with Groundwork USA. Like I said, it ended up on the New York Times. And right before I retired from that organization and became leader of the Bergen Society, they got a $6 million grant from Jeff Bezos. And you can argue the debates on that all you want, but he gave the money all to Groundwork without restrictions, $6 million. And so that's a way for us to do a lot of good as a DEI organization trying to get out there and change the face of America. We need this grant pool. I need to show you how to write a grant. I just taught a workshop. I'd love to offer that on a yearly basis. I can show you how to do that. We can cooperation between grants. It's not rocket science. It only takes a little while and you'll get pretty good at it, surprisingly good at it. And we can collaborate. We can have a monthly gathering. We can all come in and I could say to you, hey, did y'all see this grant? Or somebody could say, hey, this is what I did and it was effective. Or here's a template for a grant I wrote. Copy this language and paste that into this thing. Or here's how you can do this report. All of this is fairly easy to do. And it's how most organizations survive. There is a big demand for this because I have been even the ethical culture movement by how many people took the workshop. And then we also need to be providing micro startup funding for projects for the societies. We need to be able to do this. We should be granting, the AEU should be granting all of the societies money to experiment with these little things. And we just show you how to do that. I asked Hudson River Foundation for they asked if I wanted to apply for a grant. I did. They gave us $2,500 to study eel migration in the Hackensack River. You're thinking, what's that have to do with ethics? Well, we started by getting everybody together. We got these other nonprofit organizations. You see the young adults sitting there with some of our older adults. This is in Teaneck, New Jersey. We made these little eel mops. We had an American eel festival. We did all of these kind of stuff. We then took our Sunday school, that's our Sunday school, going out to check the eel mops on a Sunday. We coordinated with Latina scientists and got them to join us so we could get the Latina scientists who are working on river restoration to talk about their work and then go check our eel traps and look at those kinds of stuff. Have an took our spring festival and I said, let's call it the Hackensack River American Eel Festival instead. And let's talk about creating sacred spaces for all living things. Let's bring in other groups there. You can see the youth have made a puppet. There's music. There's another group down there, Friends of the Hackensack River Greenway. So that was $2,500 that we could do that, of which we kept $2,000 just for organizing this event. $500 went to everything else. And that's for my time to actually do that. So even with tiny little grants, you get 5 or 6 of these years and you can build an entire program about that. There is already enough money in our budget. I'm not going to go on this right now, but there's plenty of budget. We give, what, $175,000 that just got reduced. I think they cut down Wes's, Washington Ethical Society's apportionment. So we have less money, but there's plenty of money within this organization to fund all of this and still reduce your apportionment by some percentage there. You should all be paying less. And in my vision of this, it's a step. So each year, or every time we meet a certain milestone, it drops. It drops and it drops until you are not putting money into another American Ethical Union. They're putting money into you. And that's what we need to do. So if we go with this plan that we're suggesting, the Bergen plan, there'll be these 3-day annual training workshops in social innovation. Everybody in the New York area is invited to attend, or the Philadelphia area, we can put it down there. We'll pay hotel cost, airfare, all that can be covered under our existing funding. And I looked at the budget. We'll provide 20 hours of training in data collection each year. That's every month. We'll have this ongoing data. We'll work to create this National Ethical Action Project. We'll have 2 hours of grant writing assistance each month for each of you. So we can show you, we can help you write the grants. We can help put those grants out there until you get your feet wet and feel comfortable with that, and provide you with a $1,000 social innovation micro grant for each society. Who will do this? So part of that is to go back to what ethical culture used to do in the past, is what the societies would help the other societies. We at the Bergen Society have this expertise. Luckily, I have this expertise. It's true. They would not be able to do this without me. But for the first year, then we would help y'all do this kind of stuff. And then after that, we'll turn it over to another society. Another society says, we want to keep this going. We want to run this, and we'll give them money to do that as well, and just keep it going. And I leave you with the story about Felix Adler himself. You know, he created ethical culture when he was 24 years of age. And, you know, he immediately set out to work on social innovations, all this kind of stuff. But at that same time, he was a member of the Free Religious Association, which was a collection of these progressive Unitarians, American Transcendentalists, Hicksite Quakers, progressive Jews, yada, yada, yada. And he really thought that they could do this work. They really thought that they could go out there and make these things happen. In fact, Anna Garland Spencer, the great female activist at that time who was working to abolish child labor in the United States, she also pushed them with her to move in Adler's direction. And they voted him down, you know. And so in 1882, he quit them. Just a few years later, 78 to 82, 4 years later, he quits them. And then he founds the Chicago Ethical Society, and then he founds the St. Louis Society, and he began his work from there. This is part of our legacy. It's the cool thing that we have going within our network and our movement. And this is the kind of thing that we can bring to all of you. It just takes us to reimagine the American Ethical Union. We are not anti-AEU at the Bergen Society. In no way. In fact, we're lament the fact, and there are several, I see some of our ethical society members here. This was a big decision for us to say, well, we're not going to pay our apportionment if we're not seeing any reason to do that. We pay $15,700 a year, and we're pouring this money in, and we're sitting there going, what did you get back from this from the last 4 or 5 years? And I ask all of you with your own societies, what have you gotten back from American Ethical Union in all of these years? And the truth is that those of us who work with network organizations, they should be knocking on your door and saying, hey, could y'all use another $25,000 to run a youth program? That is not impossible. It's not beyond the pale. It's what groups do all the time. And that's what we're just kind of hoping that at the assembly, when all these proposals are presented, which they should fairly, let's just put them all out there. let everybody present what they think is best for the network. Let's all just listen to the ideas and then vote on what we're going to do. And I'm hoping that, we can answer your questions, because I kind of hope, if you feel like us, that we want to get more out of the AU than we're putting in, that you vote with us. So we're going to now allow for questions. If you have any, and I can clarify, and that was a lot of stuff. Anyone who wants this PowerPoint, we've sent it out, but we'll send it out again. Anyone who wants it, you can email me, Kurt, C-U-R-T, at ethicalfocus.org, and we'll put that in the chat, maybe how to do that. And then we can, you can email me and I'll send you this plan. And it's part of the conversations that we're hoping to have with everybody about the future of American Ethical Union. So are there any questions?
Kurt, I do see that we have a question from Emily Newman.
Okay.
Actually, a couple, but I'm going to, if I may, because I think this is an important point around the Bergen Plan. She asks, how would board members be nominated, elected, trained, and held accountable? How would officers be elected? And if I may, I'll just speak to that briefly, because we did send out to Carolyn Parker, as well as circulated to the President's Council, a motion that was approved by the Bergen Ethical Board of Trustees that would amend the AEU bylaws specifically around board membership, so that board members would be duly elected by each society's governing body, each member organization's governing body. That's the language in our bylaws. And in the absence of such an individual so elected, the president of that society would serve as the board member. Officers, I will say, would be continue to be nominated and elected as they are under the current system. There was one change that we made. Currently, if you wish to run as for an office of the AEU, separate from the Board Development Committee, it requires that you submit 50 signatures from a total of 50 signatures from at least 5 different societies. We've reduced that in our proposed bylaws amendment to 30 signatures from 3 different societies. So it does make it a little bit easier for this, the discussion and leadership to, it decentralizes, if you will, the authority of that Board Development Committee. I don't know if that answers your question fully, Emily, but Kurt, if you want to expand on that, I just wanted to make sure that that was out there.
Yeah, I see her question also about these plans and projects and who's going to run these structures. Adler had a big debate with Emerson around Emerson's oversoul. What Emerson kind of believed is that there was kind of one way of being, the sense of divinity, which was a complete whole that kind of spread out and impregnated, was present in all the kind of things on an earth. And basically the goal of Emerson's Unitarianism and Transcendentalism was to unleash the fetters for this divinity to emerge, so that we could all kind of be this one great whole thing and recognize our divinity. Adler looked at that kind of idea, and Emerson had to build all these what are called self-culture halls, where you would go to the self-culture hall and you would study and unleash your own fetters and find your own kind of inner self, which he thought was this part of this oversoul that we all have inside of us, like the seed. Oops.
He'll be back in a moment, I'm sure.
I'm there now.
Very good. Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, then why just
can hear you. So again, getting back to the question.
Yeah, it was to have this kind of one sense of self. Adler looked at that and rejected it. He thought, we are not all one. We keep trying to push this conformity of belief and opinion sometimes within the ethical culture movement. And that's not what he was interested in. He never talked about that in any of his writings. What he focused on was the plurality of all of our different beliefs and opinions, all these wonderful cacophony of noises and personalities and all this thing that percolates up that we need to be affirming and finding a place for that. This American Ethical Union structure that he created, which ran for 75 years, was to allow that. was allow all those voices to come to one place and to be heard, and from that to emerge the kind of new insights that would be very different for lots of different people. Okay, you want to handle the hands raised there?
Sure, thank you, Kurt. I do see first hand up is Jim Norman. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Jim.
All right, now I'm unmuted. Hi. I would like to propose an answer to the overarching question, do I matter in the universe? I think that too many people say, of course I matter in the universe, but why do I need ethical culture to affirm that? And my answer to that would be, when we are at our best, we are a bulwark against an increasingly cynical, hypocritical, and indifferent world. And it is, which is just another way of saying the same kinds of things that you, Kurt, you say we should be returning to. And I think you're absolutely right about that. Those are the things we need to address if we really want to address the needs and desires of other people. And it does occur to me, you mentioned the idea of a national ethical indicators. Perhaps we ought to found an ethical studies fellowship program to produce white papers on all these major issues and get ourselves out there as the experts on ethical approaches to resolving major issues. Just my thoughts.
You, Jim. Yep.
Thank you, Jim. Jackie, you're next. Please unmute yourself.
Hey, Jackie. There you go.
Unmute myself.
There you go.
Oh.
You may be able to hold down your space bar too.
I'm actually on my.
Hold your space bar down.
I think she's on her phone.
Okay.
If you're on your phone, Jackie, it's usually *9 to mute and unmute, I believe. There you go. We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Really? Okay, it's still saying that I'm muted. Great. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you can hear me. There are several things I like about this proposal, the national project, and having some kind of indicator that we could share about an ethics monitor or clock or whatever is very appealing to me personally. I don't know if I have some questions about grants and getting grants and how easy that would be, partly because I was on the board when Catherine Archibald was our interim director and became our executive director. And that was her really big focus. She thought she could do grant making. That was her background. She'd been doing it. And we got in a lot of, the AEU got in a lot of debt during that time.
Yep. I remember that.
The other thing that makes me wonder about grants, and I want to know what you think is different now, Kurt, is that, you know, I'm on a board, a regional board in Western North Carolina that has a $2.5 billion corpus and focuses on the 18 westernmost counties. And the big thing that I'm hearing all the time is they're looking for organizations that are sustainable, that don't need to rely on grants all the time, that are doing something to keep themselves operable without relying on grants.
Yeah. If I can answer. Oh, sorry.
I'd like to just say one other thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I in Asheville, I do think I've gotten a lot. The Asheville Society has gotten a lot from the AEU, not monetarily. There wouldn't be an ethical society of Asheville if it hadn't been for the AEU office and Margarita letting us know when people moved into the area that who were the beginnings of our little ethical society. So I don't feel slighted by the AEU like many of you apparently do. I greatly appreciate what the AEU has done for us and the connectivity that the AEU has helped to foster. Anyway, tell me about what's different now, in your opinion,
Sure.
about getting grants.
Thanks, Jackie. First of all, about the grants, I remember Catherine Archibald and her work. It is extremely difficult to get national grants. All grants are local grants. And the fact is, when people are focusing on the national, I would have said, let's don't do that. What we do at the network organizations, we have each of the local organizations build up their capacity to go up to local grants, which then gives you a body of success that you then go to the national group and say, I've got 20 of these out there, organizations who are doing this work. Look at what they're doing. If you're just saying, hey, I've got 20 organizations, give us money so we can make them do something. I was a grant reviewer for Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and for NEAT, the National Environmental Education Foundations. And I go through their training. I used to review grants for lots of different organizations. And our thing is what is the capacity of that local group to do exactly what you're asking it to do? And how do you build up the capacity? In the United States, we gutted the social services, unfortunately, in our country, which is another conversation we need to have one day. But the idea of the compromise with the Republicans on the end, the conservative voices is, let's just instead of the government doing this, let's just get more organizations to do this. And under the Bill Clinton administration, we then made it possible even for churches to go after this large amounts of social funding. It is possible for each local group to raise their capacity to go out to doing this. And like I said, I've never seen so much money for us to be able to do this. We should not be driven by grants. That's should be one of your 6 income streams, where my hands are. We need 6 income streams, a typical congregation, of which donations is one, grants is one, fee for service, your endowments, all these other kinds of stuff, your donations, your fundraising events, and these other things that you should be doing well that we can talk about under that. But it is great that we have to do is we have to have societies that are fiscally sustainable. Right now, we have societies that can't afford a leader. We have societies that can't afford their building. We have societies who can't afford to keep themselves going. And so we can say we want to build up the AU at the expense of the societies. For me, it just doesn't make sense. You know what I could do with $15,000 here? I'd create another job training program for young adults here if I didn't have to give $15,000. So we need to look at each of the societies and raise their capacity to do these things. You're all giving money to an organization. It has done wonderful things. I'm a fan historically of what the ethical culture movement has done. But I'll tell you how the Austin Society got started. That was on Kurt Collier's checking credit card. And so, yes, you can find a society through American Ethical Union, and you can found a society through an individual startup as well. And I think the startup is how more young adults are thinking, rather than a kind of a top-down approach. Tom?
I appreciate it. Thanks. Actually, I've got 2 questions. I hope I can ask them in turn. They're very, very different ones. And I really appreciate your career, your focus on social innovation, your commitment to the environment. And I especially like pieces of your plan. And I'm thinking about their adaptability for Brooklyn. And in looking at the pieces, things like, the youth, the job training program, or the STEAM curriculum, national ethical indicators. I like, for example, the Citizens Committee for the Citizens Committee for Children model that has a Kids Count project as a possible model for that kind of thing. Social innovation more broadly, and I also share your well-informed skepticism about organizational development. So my question is this kind of an all or nothing proposition, or have you thought about Bergen ethical cultures being sort of an ethical culture as a service model? Okay, like whereby basically people can go ahead and get different aspects of your plan on an a la carte basis, and then pay for those, or you know, or opt to go ahead and partner with Bergen to go ahead and get pieces of this. Because we may not say want to go ahead and get grants right now. We've got a lot more, you know, revenue coming in after the sale of our building, and until we get a leader, we may not want to take on the QI oversight features of what you're talking about. So we go with pieces of this in partnering with you, or is this kind of an all or nothing proposition?
Well, I remember years ago when $5 million was a lot of money. As you well know, as a business person yourself, that, you know, there are some challenges around getting a big windfall. My gentle urging to the Brooklyn Society is, if the processes that we had before we get a windfall continue after we get a windfall, you're going to be out of money at the same time. That's the same, or the advice I give when we hand out millions of dollars in grants to other organizations. Not saying you're doing that, Tom, but that, I just want to put that out there first. No, this is an idea that the societies work together. What I'm calling for is greater connection between all of us through our ability to sit on the board where we can hear each other, because we often don't have time to all get together and hear what's being said, what people are doing, what the grants that we're doing. I'm willing to offer these services to any society that wants them. The challenge that I have is we're also then on top of that giving money to the American Ethical Union. And I don't think that return on the investment should be what we should be doing. Each of the societies should hold on to their apportionments and use it for the programs and processes that we need, and then help raise money, and also raise money. The AEU should be raising money. So if they ever do get another person working in there, which we're suggesting not for 3 years, that person brought in like me, or someone who would come in, not me, but someone like me who would come in and who would just basically write grants and help each of you to continue to fund yourself and all this kind of stuff. But the grants are only a small portion of that type of activity. You know, Adler was against charity. We are not a charitable organization. That was not what he focused on. His focus was on affirming the worth and dignity of each group and to building up the reciprocity. It's slightly Weberian, if you're familiar with Max Weber. Max Weber said that what you need in order to get people to unify together is to have several people specialize in something. You specialize in something, I specialize in something, they specialize in, and to bring them together to meet big mutual needs. So I think it's possible that eventually each of the societies would have our specialties. I've done that with other network organizations where each of them has their own niche, their own ecological kind of niche, and putting their own thing in there. So I think that answers, I hope that answers your question. If we're giving enough to the societies, I think it's a cooperative model.
I just hope we have the opportunity to go for pieces of what you're proposing as opposed to the whole thing, because I think you've got some truly valuable components that you're offering. And the second question, I appreciate everyone's patience with me, is in terms of looking at the various scenarios. We've got kind of a regulatory body administrative model with kind of Hank's tweaks to it versus the, hey, let's blow everything up, an OD consultant in there, you know, under the, I guess, the revised model that's being offered by Rachel and company. And then you've got your re-envisioning of the services to be offered by the AEU and our mutuality among societies. Are these really comparable options that need to be considered in total? Is this really something that should be voted on in the aggregates that were being offered, these different pieces, or should this be unpacked into, you know, 5, 6, 7, 10 different questions that we need to go ahead and address? Because these things, you know, seem like sort of comparing, you know, a tire with a parakeet with a you know, with a bicycle.
It's like having a line item veto and coming in and saying, I want this, but not this, and moving down this good stuff. Something like that. I'm having trouble deciding how, you know, among the three when they all have valuable aspects to them. The American Ethical Union is putting out a document which will have all three proposals currently that we have side by side with the same category heading, so you can look across and see how each group would do that. So they're trying to clarify that. But yes, these are different models, very different ways of looking at that. Like I said, I do not recommend an organizational development specialist, and other people are. And so you put both of those up there and say, this is what we would be doing.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, it's going to come down to you.
Right, I'm looking forward to Treng's comparison. I'm devoting an entire weekend to trying to unpack it a bit and make these things more
It's all
comparable.
complicated, Tom. Thank you.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Milt?
And I will say that Emily also had a similar question in the chat, and I hope that that answers your question about streamlined, summarized scenarios with full pages and slides.
Yeah, and they're doing that right now. Rachel, I think Anya, Trang, Hank Gaster, myself, and you, Eric, are trying to create this thing where you can all look at them side by side. I think it'd be impossible, but hearing all these proposals and these listings to make sense of it all if we didn't have a side by side. And then we all come to the assembly, maybe we each get a workshop once again and just kind of overview them once again about how they are different, so people can make that decision. This is difficult stuff, and I understand that. That's why we're trying to have this town hall, just so we can answer questions about the proposal of the Bergen Society's saying.
And
Milt?
Thank you, Kurt. That also speaks, if I may, to Eleanor Kaplan, who also has a question in the chat, which is, how can we get this out to more AEU members, and will this be presented at or before the assembly? I will say that the Bergen Society, under, I think it's Article 11, in which any member organization can bring an initiative to the assembly, we have made a specific request. Our board did endorse the Bergen plan and did submit it for discussion and approval at the assembly.
Yeah, we need to make.
And I
easy
would
for
encourage
Yeah.
all the societies to send out these the plans as they come out. Send them out, all of them, to your members, and schedule discussion. And because I think whichever plan we end up with, we're going to need the society's involvement and energy and activism. So thank you. I'll let you go ahead, Milt. You're next. Have your hand raised.
How may we access this recording?
I can send you the recording, Milt, and put it out there. We'll find a way to anyone who wants this information, so you have that. It's a lot of information. I apologize, but we'll try and get that, including the recording, to you. So anyone who wants this recording, hopefully it's being recorded and saved, and we'll put it together for you. Okay.
Bergen does have a YouTube channel. So I think what we can do, Kurt, is to post it to our YouTube channel, and then we can send the link out.
See, that's why we have you here. Does that help, Milt?
It helps. Do you need an email address?
Yes, sir. We'll send that out, and we'll send you out also the slides from tonight. So you'll have all of that. And we'll, like I said, we'll maybe put that on the YouTube channel.
And what address will you use to send it?
Which society are you with?
This is the Ethical Society of Northern Westchester.
Yeah, so I can send it to several people at your society that I know and try and get that to you. And you can also just put your email in there in the chat if you know how to do that, and we'll copy it right now. So we send it out to you. So go down to the button that says chat, down at the bottom, a little right at the bottom, it says chat. You'll bring up the chat screen and then type your email address in there, okay? Caroline?
I have.
I'm gonna get in
now-
trouble now with the president. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
President.
Yes, you are. I have 4 things, and you cut me off whenever you're tired of hearing. Just very quickly, as president of the American Ethical Union, I'm a little nervous about hearing that there should be no money coming into the AEU. So do you have articles, references, additional information to help give context to the thought that federations auxiliary organizations like we're talking of the AEU being, don't actually need money. We need to be sending out money rather than getting money in from members. Just, you know, off screen, we just, whenever we get a chance to talk
Yes,
about.
ma'am. And
I think
that's,
we need
that's
more.
after we would be paying apportionments until you're raised up in your own capacity.
Okay, I
So,
like that.
yeah, if you look in the proposal I did say that there is money that we would be paying. It's 35% less
Step
in
down.
each
yeah.
year. Once we say that the AEU is meeting goals, we would reduce that
Exactly.
further and further. And I can provide you with information on other networks.
Okay, thank you. And so, yes, a little bit more depth there and that it'll be better. I come from a very small society. They are valiantly here tonight, but they are worn out. I mean, a few hands are doing a lot of work to try to keep it going. And so a lot of what you say is just wonderful, but it's pie in the sky for us because we're so small. Is there a step-by-step version where a small society can sort of get their toe in the water and then move up as we progress and hopefully grow?
Yeah, 30% of grants are capacity building grants, which means 30% of the money that's out there is to help you grow without really asking deliverables other than to help you grow. When you go through my training, I show you organizations who deliver millions of dollars and do all this kind of stuff with a staff of 2 people.
Yeah.
2 people. And they hire, when you write a grant, you hire the educator, you hire the salaries, you actually write a grant that you're bringing in these other young people who are looking for work to do those things. That would be funded under grants. I don't expect any of you to have much capacity to do this if you're already serving your society, running your platforms. But a grant, that's what you do. I write in the other people that I want to do this work. I write in what their salaries, I write in their deliverables, and you actually can hand that to several young people who can help you run with that ball.
I like it. Okay, thank you. Now, just a quick announcement that you, Kurt, will be on the hot seat with the Ethical Action Committee on the 26th of June at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Texas time. You're going to talk about social innovation some more in case people are interested. We're glad to open that up.
Let's talk about that date, but yes.
Okay, well, maybe not. All right, I thought it was.
Appreciate it.
Okay, never mind. Good point. And lastly, yes, Assembly is coming. We are planning at least 3 sessions, probably no more than 3 sessions, to talk about what we're calling resolutions. We're asking the makers of these proposals to convert it to something we can vote on. So it would be a resolution in the manner that we've seen them in the past, that the background of the slides and whatnot, but we're asking for a budget. We're asking for a description of what it is that the plan will be, preferably in a nutshell, so it's manageable, and you've got the comparable chart. But there will be a resolution with the action statements of now, therefore, we resolve.
Yes.
The
Right.
next problem we have, we're still trying to figure out exactly how to vote on that fairly, but that is a matter of grave concern to make sure that everybody's treated equally, fairly, equitably in the voting process, so that we have a good we move smoothly.
And this is what Eric on our board, the president there, does for a living. So I'm sure he's going to cross every T and dot every I.
Good tip. Thank you so
So,
much.
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that, Eric. Now everyone's going to
Yeah.
call me.
Oh,
Yeah.
him. Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. Vandra. Hey, Brooklyn.
Really so exciting to hear, Kurt. Just fabulous. Love everything. I'm to other concerns about, is it too much for us to take on? Is this, how can we implement all of this at any one time or immediately? However, I just wanted to throw another element into all of this mixture about the fundraising capacity so as you know, I have this small business, which I started about 10 years ago, collecting food scraps. In the 10 years that I've been doing this, a whole network across the country of community-based composters has sprung up. And it's always been my idea that each society could have as an industry arm this notion of building out a local composting collection service, and in that way connecting up with all of the other greens that are going on in each society. I really want to call that one out and see if that isn't something, along the way that we could share about, and I don't know quite how I could help implement this.
So those are called social ventures, and that is exactly what I am speaking about. One of the ways that you can approach this through this kind of work. The work I've done with the USDA was around creating food networks and food distribution systems. And their focus is not just putting food in people's hands, which is important. Their focus is how do you build a whole system around this that's sustainable, that people can make money off, that people can have a job on, those kinds of stuff. And that you're building in their income as part of the whole process of delivering on those needs. So Vandra, those are kind of the creative ideas that we could possibly do.
Yeah, well, if there is a way of sort of making that something that I could put my flag into, as part of, other conversations with people from other parts of the country, I'm there for it. Thank you.
There's a ton of professional people within the ethical culture movement. I totally believe that, including yourself, who have ideas.
Thank you. I'm ready, willing, and able to. I'm not sure how able I am, but certainly willing.
All right. Thank you. Dorothy. Dorothy, you there? We'll come back to her. Rebecca. Dorothy disappeared. Rebecca,
Okay.
hello.
I have a logistical problem or question. I don't really expect it to be answered, but I guess I want to make it sure it's put on the table to be answered before assembly. So your proposal, let's say there's 3 proposals, yours, the main one coming from AU, and status quo.
And Hanks, there's another one called.
Well,
Hanks.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. But the way I'm reading, let's just leave it, make it simple. We've got 2 programs, Rachel's and yours. Let's just say that for the moment. We are to go to the assembly and we are to vote on this plan. If we vote on your plan, then the way that the board gets voted on is completely different than the way it gets voted on now and the way it's going to get voted under Rachel's thing. So how do we vote on the board on the same day that we're voting on the plan, because we won't have, 22 people to vote on, or they won't have been decided before we come to assembly. It's just in terms of timing, and I don't understand how we vote on the plan, how we vote on officer or directors, not officers, or how we vote on a budget. We're supposed to vote on a budget at the same time we're voting on this plan.
Yes.
I don't get it. So
Our bylaws allow for assembly and for special assemblies. So, it's possible to call another assembly at a later date in order to work out details such as this. We are presenting different models. So that may be what happens at the first assembly in July. We are
thank you. I had thought that was true, and then I was told no, there was no way to have another assembly. So then I kind of thought,
it's in the bylaws. Yeah.
Okay, so we could have a resolution to do that. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
In
Thank you.
fact, I think if Jackie's still on the line, that's one of the things that she may be eventually suggesting, is that we're just vote for more time for this thing to happen, and some other things. So because they are radically different, and I'm aware of that too.
Right.
But you can call more than one assembly.
Okay, that answers a whole bunch of questions. Thank
Carolyn,
you.
did you want to answer to that, or?
I just validate, yes, that the bylaws do allow for a special assembly. And this assembly, I believe, I'm checking carefully with the legal committee as we go, but this committee can say we will vote only on the scenario, and agree to call a special assembly within X number of days or something like that. I believe that at least one board member is proposing something like that for, that will be discussed at the board meeting this Saturday. I hear that there's another resolution that someone is proposing that would delay votes on both the budget and the board until another time delay has happened. There's also discussion of how we can actually use the time we have together to vet the board members, the candidates on the various scenarios. Now, I mean, there are probably multiple ways to do this, and it's sort of a influx, but hopefully we will have it resolved maybe by Saturday and certainly by June 30th.
Thank you.
You're doing fantastic work, Carolyn. I have to say, really,
it's a lot of work.
and very challenging, and it's much appreciated.
Much
I would also like to say that, you know, really the governing body of the AEU is the assembly, the delegates from the societies who go to the assembly, and that's where the voting is done, and that's where any change to the board would be made. So I do believe that we can come through a single assembly with both the revised board structure as well as a clear plan in place. That's my belief.
Yeah. And Dorothy reiterated with them that other people are suggesting that we have a period of time in between because we're going to have to get reorganized. We're presenting two radically different approaches. So that would mean we vote on the plan and then maybe we give our time to figure out how to do that. Or with Eric, we can have this information in advance so that people really know what they're voting on in totality. That may be the simplest way if we can get the plan out now in July, way before. So people say, this is what you're voting on. And if you're voting on Plan C, then you need to be able to have already identified a delegate. But that may be still hard for some groups to do that. And we understand that. Emily.
Yeah, I'll say with this whole process of scenarios, I'm getting very concerned about us turning it into a binary. I mean, I know we have multiple scenarios, but this sort of like, either we have societies connecting more and supporting each other and growing their programs, or we don't. And I think we need both. I understand the frustrations of the AEU not providing enough service, but I also worry that by losing that central organization, we lose the publicity of ethical culture, we lose the representation in our coalitions, we lose the ability to have a national, hub that can do both the archival stuff and develop the new stuff. And, Kurt, as much as I appreciate your expertise, I always have that scenario of what if you get hit by a bus, tomorrow, and all of, like, how are we recording things and making sure that positions last even when people don't last? So I understand your concern of, not wanting or not recommending we get an external organization development expert, but you're also promoting yourself as a organizational development expert. And so it's almost like don't choose someone else, choose me. Don't hire an executive director, but I'm going to run all these things for you. And maybe you are brilliant, but maybe we also need to open up the application process again and see what other brilliant people may be a good fit. And, and similar with this idea, like yes, I do like the pluralism of a big board where every society is represented, but do we actually have proof that worked in the past? Because we moved away from it and we've been away from that for decades. So, I guess it's knowing how difficult it is for 9 people to work together when they've been voted on by an assembly makes it hard for me to imagine what, again, with potentially growing societies, what 30 and in the future 50 and yada yada people who were, ideally chosen as the best representative by their society, but there may be arguments there too. I know, so I know I'm ranting and I'm throwing out a lot of my concerns, but I just feel like
Thank you,
there's
Emily.
a lot of questions that we can't even address because of all of the things being thrown at us at once.
No, that's true. That I totally agree with 99% of what you said, that this is a lot of information. There is a lot of problems that currently at the AEU board, which you may not be aware of, with a small group of people. So you can have problems with a small group of people. You can have problems with a big group of people. It has nothing to do with the number of people that's out there. And I know for a fact, because I've been on big, giant, massive boards before, especially when you're empowering people and giving them trust. When you don't have trust, you have a small group of board members and you only say that certain people can make decisions. When you have lots of trust and you build in support and capacity, you have lots of other people running different things, which is the way the American Ethical Union did this. They actually empowered lots of people to make decisions. They gave other people kinds of power, and those people could do the work of the organization. Now, this board would be composed of one representative from every society. We still tend to think of we need to consolidate everything into the American Ethical Union at the almost at the expense of the societies, because we're paying for that. The model should be, and what's shown in resiliency and sustainability models is your member organizations need to be stronger, if not as strong or stronger than the central one. You say it's about me, I would say it's about all the societies. Right now, what happened to us is our dear friend Elle Miller died suddenly, and we lost this institutional memory in one person. So it can happen all kinds of ways. You're exactly correct. And then when Bart left, the same thing. We've lost this institutional memory. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of us have been around for a long period of time. We also all know each other practically. I know more than probably 75% on this people on the screen. And we know how to rely on each other and provide the kind of services that we have always done. We think those responses came from the AEU board. In many cases, they came from the National Leaders Council, from the leaders, or they came from the board, the program councils and other things in the committees who did that. I don't want to make this about me. And I totally believe in that this should not be a cult of personality. So that means let's decenter the American Ethical Union. Let's put power in all of the societies once again and raise their capacity so that even if a whole society gets hit by a bus, the rest of the movement continue on. But those are good concerns, Emily. I'm not saying those are not bad ideas. I'm with you for a lot of that, but there we are. Vandra?
Yes, so in terms of backstories and other types of agendas, I am concerned that there are other agendas that are slipping in here that people, so I'll be frank, I mean, I'm not that interested in joining being part of the Human Association or being a UU.
No, I'm not.
And the degree to which there's some agendas out there that people are not coming forward and saying, well, I think that, we should, because we're this small and we're, dilapidated and blah, blah, well, let's just, we'll all just join with with Big Brother here or the Big Sister there. Yeah. That I think I am so upset that people don't just come out and say that. I mean,
they have come out and say that. And the point is that the majority of us say that is dead in the water. We are not Unitarians, right? Some people are, and peace and happiness to them, but the vast majority of us are not humanitarians. Several of us are not even humanists, including myself, right? So why would we want to join some other dwindling organization? And I can get you hooked with other big organizations who could provide us with a ton more resources than things like the AHA, which has a zero track record of sustaining any kind of congregation in the United States, why would we move to those models? We are not humanists. We're not the AHA. You're a lot of your humanists. We're not the AHA. So I'm with you, Vandra.
Right, right, right.
Just say that that is dead on the
yes.
arrival.
And I'm absolutely, and the other thing, the degree to which one wants to say, you know, yes, we are personalities. There are lots of personalities, and we want to love them and breathe some fire into the personalities that are there for us all, those versus the personalities that are there for themselves. And I just want to call that out. And at my rough old age, I want to be able to say, you know, that we are all entitled to be and should be full-on human beings. And the degree to which we'll put that into the growth of a movement, great. The degree to which we want a movement to blow into my personal sale, to aggrandize myself, to make me the king of whatever. Hello, let's call it out as soon as we see it. Thank you.
That's why I think we need a board with as many people as possible. You know,
I absolutely agree that. Can I just tell you my little Brooklyn story in 2005?
can
when
you
we
do it
had
in
civil-
20 seconds?
And when we had a similar issue of a board of 9, I said, first thing we need to do is open up the board so that all the fresh blood could come onto that board. And it was in that board that we were able to at least have the conflicts, which there were, come out. So
Yeah.
I'm all for you. I'd say, yes, open up the damn gate.
Well, thank you. I come from a tiny town of 1,800 people in South Texas along the Mexican border. And, you know, como mucha gente en Sur Texas, yo habla en español también. It's a Tejano culture, which is very different from what other people are used to. But the thing is when I encountered ethical culturists, I thought, oh my God, these people everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's so strong. Everybody's got so bright ideas. Everybody's got. And at the first, it was highly intimidating. I must tell you, I thought I was going to go up to the Bronx and tell people how they could be. And they set me straight pretty forward. What it is this, we have to embrace the adversity, the plurality, the diversity of opinions that Adler says that is our mojo. That's our religion, is that we would allow all of these voices, all of these unique personalities. Anything which focuses on a conformity of belief should be anathema to us. Instead, it needs to be something that emerges from all these different voices. And we just need to find a way to embrace that. And, you know, we got a lot of people saying, oh, no, we got to, you can't talk to people like that. You shouldn't be like that. And I'm like, yes, to a certain extent, we all need a way to have civil discussions with each other and affirm each other's worth and dignity, which is what we're really all about. But let's not lose the plurality.
Okay, you'll be back, I hope, I presume.
First thing I'm gonna do is get a new computer. Yeah, so let's celebrate that. Let's allow, sometimes we bump heads, but that doesn't make either one of us a bad person. And I think that what we're trying to do is we're all trying to, I think people here really care about this movement. They really do. And they care so much they're willing to fight about it. And that's not a bad thing sometimes. We just need to make sure that we're fighting in a way that we ultimately know that we affirm the worth and dignity. And if I were back home, I'd take you all to the bar and we don't have a shot of whiskey after this. But it's, if you drink anymore. But people care about this, and I understand they get very passionate about it. I've had a lot of things thrown my way, a lot of things, and I will not throw them back at them. And only thing we can do is just say, yeah, let's move, let's make it work, y'all. We can do this. And we have to, because we're losing societies and we're losing people and we're losing our youth. They're gone. And if we don't do something radically different, other than the same old thing and stuff, and I know this sounds like pie in the sky, but we have to do something different. Monica, did you have your hand raised?
Thank you. I just wanted to pipe in with the idea of, I'm concerned that we're spending so much time and energy trying to preserve ourselves as an institution, right? Rather than be a vehicle for the message of ethics as the underpinning for everything. And that's what we have. That's unique, I think. It's not just unique to us, but there are so many amazing groups, and my frame of reference, my lens is the climate movement, that are doing incredible work. And, you know, whether it's the League of Women Voters who are doing ethical work around democracy, or the Brennan Center that's doing ethical work around democracy, or youth that are doing climate work. There are many thousands and tens of thousands of people who are doing really deep ethical work, and they're doing it for that reason. And that's the motivation, pure and simple. And it's not labeled as such, right? It's called something else. So I find that the people who come into our building, who we offer space to, allies, collaborators, partners, are struck by how simple and how profound the message of ethics is. And when people realize that the work they're doing is basically ethics, foundationally, they feel like they've entered a space where they've always belonged. And that doesn't always translate into membership immediately. But I think that's where we have something to offer, right? And rather than focus in a very insular way on our organizations and our societies and the logistics of the larger organization, I think if we welcome in all of these people who are doing enormously ethical work for the right reasons, and bring them into our space, whether it's a society of 10 people, so I opening ourselves up in different ways. No, where no project.
Drink of water out of a fire hose because it's a lot of information. So just so to clarify one thing, are you saying that we would have an organization made up of a person from each one of the ethical societies around the country instead of the AEU as a separate organization? It would be comprised of each of the small organizations. Is that, am I misunderstanding that?
We have what's called a congregational polity, which means that the assembly is actually the governing body. We created the American Ethical Union as an auxiliary organization to support and allow for those groups to coordinate. So yes, there would be an AEU. We're calling it the AEU, American Ethical Union, but it's composed of one representative from each society. So the AEU would continue to exist, but the power has always resided in the polity, which of the congregations. So really the government is the assembly that comes together in July. That is the government, and it then hands the marching orders to the American Ethical Union, not vice versa. So we're saying, yes, we keep the AU going. We do need that national presence. And at that point, it's good for some grant writing to have that in there. It is composed, however, of each member from each society. And I want to go back to something that Monica said real quick, and I'll come back to you, Lee. I'll tell you that I've heard that kind of argument before. You and I have had this argument. We're dear friends. And I think that when I run and do organizational development for a lot of groups, I have to tell you that the thing that you have to be is resilient and sustainable. If you're not resilient and you're not sustainable, you will not survive. Your mission will not survive. We have buildings to run. We have people to employ. We have jobs to give people. That's what we have to do. And so that does mean that we have to have organizations in order for this to happen. And so when I write grants and teach people, it's about, listen, you got to put yourself there as a sustainable organization. Even if you said, okay, give me $100,000 and I'm gonna hand all that money out to the community, you will not get that grant. And as a grant reviewer, I'd look at that, I'm like, are these people insane? Don't they have insurance bills and employees and people they have to do? Do you know that you can put 10% in a grant just for what's called an indirect? I do all the time. I'll write a grant for 3,000 and 10% of that is just going to pay the copier and the phone on this computer that keeps crashing. So what organizations, they look at that and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. You just need 10%, you don't need more. For bigger groups, it's 23 to 35%. You have to be a resilient, sustainable organization to hold any kind of a community vision and to bring that forward. And the work that I did in Yonkers, New York, is to do that, to be sustainable, to be there for the long term and to continue to march forward, but to create a place, like you said, Monica, for all those other groups who are doing exactly, in many ways, the socially innovative kind of work, and to support that. I don't care whose name ends up on it, as long as my name is first on the grant, but because I want the money. So that'd be my only comment about that. I agree so much with what you're saying, but you have to be a resilient organization and sustainable. No one's going to give you money if they don't think you can. And you'll probably seen your major donors have dropped out for the exactly same reason. The major donors of the American Ethical Union have dropped out for the same reason. Why give the money? It's not sustainable, it's not growing, it's not doing anything. So there you go, Lee, I'm going to take it back to you. You weren't finished. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I just, as we've said before, we're a small group. I mean, there's probably 15 to 18 of us that get together every week. And I look around this group that's on this call, and I think it's safe to say most of us are over the age of 40, 50, all with gray hair. And that's pretty much, to me, the biggest issue of what's going on in this organization. And that is, we have no young people who are coming in and taking an active role. Now, I could be completely wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. It certainly is what we're dealing with in our organization, in our small, group. And also, if I look here, I don't see any ethnic diversity either. There's no Asian, there's no Hispanic, it's just old white people. And that's a concern for me, because if we're going to make any difference in this country or in this planet, we've got to engage young people.
Yep.
So while this conversation has been a great deal about money and grants, that our organization is not that isn't even an issue for us. But what is an issue is that we're all older, and unless we bring in some young people, there won't be an organization. So that's what I'd like to see addressed.
Yeah, and I'll have to tell you right there, because that was my opening words, if you missed that, Lee, that if you're not relevant to the lives of young people, they're not going to come in the door. Right. So the work I do as the National Youth Program Director formerly of an organization was to do exactly that. If you are not focused on social innovation, if you're not working on creating jobs for people of color, if you're not working on career pipelines for young adults of color and diversity and all this kind of stuff, you are not going to go anywhere.
Right.
And that's what we do here at the Bergen Society, where most of our young people in our program now are exactly that. We're doing a lot of stuff with a lot of different groups of young people to get them out there to do stuff like that, including, you have to put on programs that are relevant to the young people. And
right.
too often we're not out there working with the young groups and providing them with the jobs and the career pipelines that we're doing here at the Bergen Society. And that's exactly what we need to be doing.
Can we get to more of the questions?
Thank you. And I do want to just give a brief time check. I see that it's 9:26.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes.
We're almost at 2 hours. I'm not going to be too strict on the time, but I do want to bring this to some measure of closure and remind people that we will have more opportunities for discussion of this at the AEU Assembly and in the pre-work to the Assembly, and encourage all of you to either participate yourselves or to get folks in your various communities and societies to participate, sign up as delegates, learn about it, and take leadership in the AEU.
Yeah, and
Thank
thanks
you.
to everybody
you.
for coming
Thank
and
you for-
participating.
I do see that Dorothy and Emily do still have their hands raised, so I didn't want to cut them off, but I did want to do a quick time check.
We got
So,
2 minutes. Yeah.
okay. Dorothy, if you'll be quick, and Emily, if you want, you please feel free to follow up directly. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Just one of the things that is on my mind is that something that I don't think is being addressed at all is the fact that we have many, many societies that do not have leaders and don't necessarily intend to have leaders.
Mhm.
And, you know, my society's been around since 1986. It's steady and it's primarily lay leadership. We did have a part-time leader for several years, but like 8th time leader. So most of the actual leadership is coming from lay leaders. And I think that's a model that people need to understand. So when I don't think the goal is necessarily to get to where you have a leader. I think that model is really changing amongst our societies. And I just wanted to mention that.
Sure, Dorothy. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, some societies run with leaders and some not. Some synagogues have rabbis, some don't. You know, it's but the religion continues on. This model is focused on the societies, not on leaders necessarily running these types of things. And I understand that. And some people like the lay leadership led thing, and it works for them. That works in some societies, and they do quite well with that. Other societies, though, want a professional leader. Hopefully that professional leader is doing the kinds of skill building that they can do to keep that organization going too, and keeping that long-term vision. But not every society is going to have a leader. And that's just the way it is. I advocate for it, but as long as you have someone that's playing that role, and a lot of these leaderless societies do, they have someone who's kind of functioning like a lay leader and taking control for that. So, yep, agreed with you, Dorothy.
Let's make sure we have time for Emily. I know we're just at
Last
9:30.
comment then.
Thank you. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay, I'll I guess just limit my thing to we have done national campaigns or tried to push for national projects through ethical action, and that was and like every assembly had an action that was supposed to continue on between, but you always have that challenge of societies not wanting to be told what to do and wanting to have some flexibility of how they do things, which is why I'm also kind of concerned about the national ethical indicator. I don't think that ethical culture, while we have ethical, of course, everywhere in our name, like should try to be an ethical expert, because we're not all academics and professors, and we're not setting a standard for society. We're about putting ethics at the heart of how we live our lives. So it almost is more of a like, instead of rating people's ethics, we should be trying to spread and educate more on ethics.
Yeah, and my only comment to that is, as an ethical culture person myself, ethical culture is not a belief system to me, it's a praxis. It's a way of life. Many of us try to live our way of life, of our ethics. That is our belief. That's why we're so upset with people. When Felix Adler was asked to join the humanist movement, he said no. He said the same thing to the socialists and to other groups, because he said the problem with these organizations is they think they know how all life should be at all time. And they're just pushing forth this agenda that they have, this conformity of belief. Rather, we should be creating the culture from which ethics can emerge and continue to emerge. And that would come through our praxis. I'm a total non-theistic. I really don't care much about the various different beliefs people have. I care more about how they put their ethics into praxis, and what are the ways in which we're building the culture that affirms the worth and dignity of all people. Because currently we have a culture that is not affirming the worth and dignity of all. And that's what we dedicate our lives to. That is our religious tradition. of dedicating ourselves to service, to uphold the community, the greater culture, a society for an ethical culture. Society for ethical culture, in order to create that space in which life can emerge and flourish within all of us. And we have that capacity. If we focus less on trying to say, here's what you should believe, all y'all should believe this one same thing, I think that's silly. That's why I will never be a humanist. It's ridiculous to try and just say that you have to have these set of beliefs and that everybody should have these set of beliefs. Let's instead find that common ground where we and Republican down the street